I've always been interested by class divides and racial divides. Coupled with my love for film, I'm often put in a position of questioning that fine line between art, commercialism, and propaganda, and censorship over the freedom of speech. There is a film that is so racist that today it still shapes the perception of black people across the world. A film that at the time was celebrated and became the biggest box office hit of its time. It had the commercial impact that a film like Avatar or Titanic had upon their releases. Adjusted for inflation, the film made $1.5 billion, meaning that the film would sit at number 11 in the top grossing films of all time. A film that was so revered, it was shown at the White House for the then president, Woodrow Wilson, and is responsible for the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan. That film is the controversial 1915 silent film, The Birth of a Nation. I am going to deconstruct just how this film became so popular and why it's still considered one of the greatest films of all time, as well as conclude whether the film is art or merely just propaganda. And should films like Gone with the Wind and The Birth of a Nation be banned for narratives that were ill-conceived in retrospect?
Let me ask you about Gone with the Wind first and the HBO move here. The racist depictions in Gone with the Wind were wrong then and were wrong today, but it's not the only film that's considered racist. What's your view, first of all, of this decision by HBO to pull it?
I think it's a bit extreme.
To fully break down this subject, we're going to first look at the history of the film and the history of the book that the film is based on. The Birth of a Nation is based on the book The Klansman, a historical romance of the Ku Klux Klan by Thomas Dixon Jr. It was published in 1905. The book depicts free black American citizens, mainly men, as murderers, sexual abusers, and thieves. At the time, the book was somewhat of a superhero novel, where the Ku Klux Klan are seen as the all-powerful superheroes who will save America from the newly freed slaves who will take over the country. Now, the thing is, at the time, this wasn't seen as the norm. There was an uproar. In fact, Dixon was denounced for his rekindling of old racial hatred and bringing up old conflicts between the North and the South. There was also a play based on the book, and when it was released, it was banned by various states in America. However, despite all of this, the play was hugely popular in the South, drawing in record-breaking audiences. In fact, the play was seen as more of a hit than the book itself. In Bainbridge, Georgia, a black man was lynched shortly after the presentation of the play in October 1905. In 1906, 3 more black men were lynched in Springfield, Missouri. A news report said it seemed filled with the spirit of the Klansman, which created such an anti-Negro feeling here 6 weeks ago. Dixon, however, claimed his works had reduced the lynchings, not increased them. Really? Whilst the book and the play weren't the full catalyst for the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan, they certainly sparked a flame. The book itself had this image, a burning Latin cross. This wasn't something the Klan used to use until the Klansman book was released. Dixon, who had Scottish ancestry, drew upon the Scottish tradition of the Clan Tada, a burning cross used to call Klan members to arms. Even the white robes were not a thing until this book was released. Dixon himself is described as an American Baptist minister, politician, lawyer, lecturer, writer, and filmmaker. Now, before you watch this video, did you even know who Dixon was? For the man, it seems, is one of the most influential figures in the history of American race relations. He single-handedly, through the book and the play, launched the birth of a movement that was evil and vile, and the birth of this film.
Is that D.W. Griffith?
Yes.
He looks all right, doesn't he?
Sure, he's all right. He made The Birth of a Nation.
Director D.W. Griffith is one of the most pioneering filmmakers of all time. He's one of the first directors to employ the technique of cross-cutting. You may have seen this technique in a number of films. It's essentially the only way that Christopher Nolan has told a majority of his stories. It's when a tale cross-cuts between different narratives. Inception does this best, especially towards the end of the film, as it draws upon all the dreams that are interwoven at the same time. D.W. Griffith is a pioneer of this technique. First in his short film, A Corner in the Wheat, and then on a grand scale in The Birth of a Nation. The 3-hour and 15-minute epic film was also the first American film to have a musical score for an orchestra, to pioneer close-ups, jump cuts, intermissions, fade-outs, and featured an epic battle sequence that used 100 extras, made to look like 1,000. This was a first at the time. Now here's the thing, up until I decided I wanted to make this video essay, I had not watched the film. I had no desire to watch the film. I knew about the film from various sources over the years, probably from a very young age I knew about the film, but I never had the desire to sit down and watch it. Especially if you're black like I am, the film comes with a connotation of negativity. And honestly, before even seeing the film, I wanted the film banned. I knew the hatred it had stirred up in the past, I knew about its history in America, and I knew about the murders and the riots that the film had caused. Yeah, I honestly had no desire in my whole life to ever watch this film. However, I've always had a fascination of the idea of racism and class. You can see it in my own works. Now that I've seen the film, I'm ashamed to say the first third of this film is absolutely mind-blowing. It's an incredible film, for that first third at least. It's a silent film, it uses cue cards, and it uses techniques, as I mentioned before, that have never been seen up until that point. Knowing that this was the first time these techniques were ever used in film is life-changing. And to see it is also life-changing. They're techniques that I use and love in my own films. And sure, in that first hour of the film, there's so many uses of blackface, cultural stereotypes that are incorrect, and general implications of race relations that are not linked to any factual information whatsoever. But the film is broken down in two sections, the Civil War and the Reconstruction. For quite a lot of the first part, it tells the story of how the Civil War started and ended, even given an incredible reconstruction of the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. And honestly, it's one of the best committed to film. So far, so good, bar the issues I mentioned. But the second section, Reconstruction, is where things start to run amok. Using fear to tell its narrative, it shows an America out of control because blacks now have the power to vote. And these menacing black characters, played by white actors in blackface, have taken over Congress and the government and run the country into the ground, taking their innocent white women by force, killing, looting, and every other terrible thing you can think of. So it's down to the Ku Klux Klan in the white robes and weapons to save America. Now, if this sounds ridiculous, it's because it is. Whilst the first third of the film is a masterpiece in editing, directing, and storytelling, the last 2/3 of the film are an absolute mockery of everything that was built up in the first third. Now, if it was a case of harmless mockery, or even being satirical, it wouldn't be as bad. But the film truly does land in some dangerous areas and keeps on doing so for another 2 hours. Maybe one of the biggest crimes of the film that has been little spoken of over the years, and that fascinates me personally, is the casting. There are a number of real black extras used in the film. Griffith said of this the following: "On a careful weighing of every detail concerned, the decision was made to have no black blood amongst the principals. It was only in the legislative scene that Negroes were used, and then only as extra people. The thing that sits uncomfortably with me is that either the black extras in the film were lied to about the narrative, or they were so desperate for work that they did it anyway. And there have been a number of times during the course of Hollywood where such things have happened. One that immediately springs to mind is Disney's Song of the South, where slavery is depicted as being worth singing happy songs about. Actor James Baskett was at the time routinely criticised for taking on such a demeaning role. He was, however, praised for his performance in the film and was the first ever Afro-American male to receive an Academy Award. And maybe more famously, Hattie McDaniel, who appeared in Gone with the Wind as the house servant, Mammy, another quite demeaning role, won the 1939 Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She was the first black actor to do so. And at the award show, she had to sit at a segregated table because it took place at a whites-only theatre. Maybe even worse for her was that many blacks didn't see the win as a good thing due to the nature of the character, which reinforced stereotypes at a time when civil rights movements were gathering momentum. She even tried to do her character of Mammy on tour across America, and many blacks did not approve nor attend. So in a way, maybe it was understandable as to why black extras took a role in the film, even if they did know about the narrative. Getting into Hollywood, even as a white person, was hard, and still is. Potentially the lure of being in such a massive Hollywood production was enough. But one thing was for certain. President at the time, Woodrow Wilson, definitively the worst American president ever, loved the film. February the 18th, 1915, The Birth of a Nation became the first movie shown in the White House. President Woodrow, his family, and members of his cabinet all attended in unison, along with Griffith and Dixon. Now, there are disputes as to whether Wilson knew about the content of the film before he approved it being shown at the White House, but they seem rather moot when you consider that he and Dixon graduated college together, and Dixon dedicated his novel about Lincoln, The Southerner, to Wilson. In a popular magazine, Wilson is even attributed with the quote, "It is like writing history with lightning, and my only regret is that it's all so terribly true." So it's quite obvious that this man knew what the film was about. You have to remember that at the time, this film was as big as the release of Endgame or Avatar. So as a president and aligning yourself with such a massive release, it's a no-brainer really. And this is despite the fact that on the opening night of the film, there were riots and huge pushback from blacks and whites across America. The film was a huge financial success, and Woodrow saw that as a wonderful opportunity to piggyback. So if you thought Trump was the worst American president ever, you know nothing about Woodrow Wilson. This man was a tyrant. If you'd like to know more about Woodrow Wilson, you can watch the Cynical Historian's video all about him. It goes into far more details than this video is going to go into, and give him a like or subscribe. He's a wonderful YouTuber. The film's impact cannot be understated. As mentioned, upon its release, there were riots. The Ku Klux Klan were rebirthed, and white gang violence against blacks shot right up. A 2023 study found that roadshow screenings of the film were associated with a sharp spike in lynchings and race riots between 1915 and 1920. The film stirred up emotions that were running high in the underbelly of American society. At the time, in a movie theater, a now famous scene in the film where the character Flora is being chased by a black-faced black character Gus moved the viewer to fire shots at the screen in order to help her. So, is this film art or propaganda? Well, The Birth of a Nation is often compared to the Nazi 1935 film Triumph of the Will, which is a pure propaganda film. Both aim to assert a political point of view which is rooted in opinion and uses little to zero facts to establish their theories. Now, if we look at the word propaganda and its meaning, does The Birth of a Nation fall into this category? Now, I would say yes, it firmly does. My counterpoint to this would be the following. Did the director have those intentions when he set about making the film? It's quite clear that the author had those intentions, so we could say the book, The Klansman, is pure propaganda, but we're here to talk about the film. So let's look at the meaning of the word art. And the term emotional power sticks out to me because this film, whilst being hugely inaccurate and highly controversial, does lean heavily into that term. When you think of the emotion it evokes at the time and even now. Quentin Tarantino has gone on record to say that he made Django in response to the birth of a nation. And the most pioneering black director of all time, Spike Lee, had this to say.
Talking about all the cinematic innovations D.W. Griffith have come up with, this and that, but they did not, they left out everything that had to do with the social impact of the film. That this film regenerized the Klan. The Klan was dormant, it was dead, and brought about rebirth, and therefore, because of rebirth, there was rebirth to the Klan, it led directly to black people being lynched, strung up, castrated, and just murdered. But that was never discussed. I had no problem with Birth of a Nation being screened, but let's put it in context. I have no problem. Huckleberry Finn should be in schools. To Kill a Mockingbird should be, just because of the word N-word, but let's discuss it. Let's not say because, can't be seen, can't go in the library. I think that stuff is foolish.
So should the film be banned? I'll leave you with some words that I gave in an interview for Al Jazeera TV back in 2020. This was at the height of the Black Lives Matter riots, and the film Gone with the Wind was under the microscope because many people wanted the film banned. And here were my thoughts.
I think all film is art. Art is a form of expression, and of course, it's a freedom of speech as well. And to remove a film such as Gone with the Wind or any other film from any platform is, in my opinion, wrong. However, having said that, there are a lot of inaccuracies in the film and a lot of stereotyping,
right,
which is not a full portrayal of black people back then or back now even. Are we going to worry about, like, I've made 2 films. Do I need to worry about my films being removed in 100 years' time? Because it may be against what people are thinking 100 years from now.
So The Birth of a Nation is, as I said, one of the most pioneering films ever made. And like I said, I didn't want to watch this film, but now I have. I do appreciate the filmmaking techniques in the film, and it really pains me to say that. However, the film is still highly offensive, and it got my blood boiling. It's one of the first epic American films ever made. And as I said, it does go through historical moments in history that really did happen, which lends a sense of credibility to the film. However, it is one of the most painful watches I've had to do in my whole life. The film is openly offensive, it's factually inaccurate, it's highly controversial, maybe the most controversial film I've ever seen. But does that mean it should be banned? What do you think? Do you think the film should be banned? Do you think films similar to it should be banned? Or is that infringing upon people's freedom of speech? Let me know in the comments. And listen, if you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, and hit the notification button to be informed when I post a new video. So Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino both have strong thoughts about the birth of a nation. And if you want to find out how Spike Lee and hip-hop influenced 90s indie films and Quentin Tarantino, well, all you need to do is click this video here, and until we speak again, big love.